Notre Dame hung tough and knocked off the Boise State Broncos 28-7 to move to 3-2 on the season. And yet the main thing on my mind after watching that spectacle, I guess you can call it, is thank God that's over.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome in to this instant reaction edition of Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018. Now I'm a producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish since 2020. Thank you for joining me here on Saturday, October 4th, just minutes after Notre Dame knocked off Boise State 28-7, and thank you for making this your first watch or listen after the game. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. And real quick, be sure to subscribe on YouTube or follow along on your preferred podcast platform, so that way you don't miss any of our daily coverage and more instant reaction episodes like this one. So let's get into it. Notre Dame won 28-7. They cover the 20.5-point spread. This was a big win that Notre Dame needed, obviously, to get back over 500 and then continue stacking wins so that they can ultimately finish 10-2. And this was a very interesting game. Certainly not the most fun game to watch if you're a fan. I think this is going to go down as one of those games where we just maybe never speak of it again, right? Like, it's great that Notre Dame got the win. You got to give credit to Boise State. You knew that they were going to play tough. They were going to play hard, and they did for 60 minutes. But Notre Dame was clearly the better team in this one. They made their own mistakes, but they also had to deal with some god-awful officiating for the entire game. Like, I can't really remember that. And when I think back on this game, when it's the offseason, maybe it's next February, right? We're kind of reminiscing on the season that just happened. Whenever we think about this Boise State game, as sad as it is, the number one thing that I think everyone is going to remember is the officiating. And we're obviously going to talk about how the Notre Dame defense stepped up, because this was a great performance from Chris Ash's unit. We've been very critical of them on the show all season long. I think that has been fair, but you got to give credit where it's due, and the credit is absolutely due for the Notre Dame defense. They had a great game, holding Boise State to 7 points. The offense had an up and down day. The running back shined once again. CJ Carr had a really inconsistent performance. I would say his worst so far in Notre Dame uniform. We're going to talk about that. And then at the end, we're going to wrap it up with what this win means going forward. But seriously, the story of the game was the officiating. It was a disaster, both sides. I've never seen anything like it. So there were a combined 24 penalties for both teams. 24 accepted penalties, I should say. There were actually more flags thrown than the 24 that were accepted. Some of them were just declined. So we have a combined 24 penalties for 224 yards from this ACC officiating crew. And some of it was legitimate. I think at the beginning, Notre Dame had some self-inflicted wounds like Billy Stroud's false start, but there was all kinds of ticky-tack penalties that went both ways. The Eli Raridon push-off I thought was ridiculous when they called offensive pass interference on that. The Boise State defender was just too small and just flopped. So that was another one of the many bad calls in this game. And then honestly, Notre Dame got one back on the ensuing possession because they called an offensive pass interference on Boise State. And I didn't think it was an offensive PI there. And then it felt like even if there wasn't a flag on the play, they would have to review it, even in situations where it did not necessitate a review whatsoever. And it just felt like Notre Dame could never get into a rhythm in this game, because whenever they had a positive play, it was going to be called back for a penalty or there was going to be a review. This was just an awful game to watch as a fan. Like, obviously, we're going to be locked into every single second of this game because we're Notre Dame fans. This is our team. But I can't imagine watching this as just a casual college football fan, just someone who thought this would be a good matchup between a really talented Notre Dame team and a feisty Boise State team. This was just a tough watch throughout, and the commentators were talking about it. Everyone on social media was talking about it, and honestly, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say this is one of the worst officiated games I have ever seen at any level of football. There has to be some accountability for this officiating crew and what they were doing throughout the game. Like, it was just bad. Like, the fact that they called Malachi Fields' touchdown catch, right? The one that was called off because of a pass interference, which was an egregious pass interference. That was one call that they got right. But the fact that they called that a touchdown on the field is frankly ridiculous. Fields caught the ball with both of his feet out of bounds. Like, I couldn't believe it. Now, of course, they review it. They realize he was out of bounds. They take the pass interference penalty. And there was a great moment. I actually put this out on the Locked On Irish Twitter account. You can see Mike Denbrock in the huddle calling the next play, which is going to be a pass to Malachi Fields in the end zone. And Fields is just giving him the biggest smirk. He's so happy because he knows the ball is going to be going to him and he is going to score a touchdown, and he did. So the offense made some plays in this game. There's plenty of things to like from this one, but still, it was just such a tough watch because it felt like after every single play, there was going to be some flag, or there was going to be some conversations about a potential flag, or they were going to review it. It was just a terrible display of officiating from start to finish. So that's going to be the story of this game. Does it mean anything long term? No, not really, but that is the main takeaway I have about this game. Now, outside of the officials, the biggest storyline for Notre Dame that is actually going to carry beyond this Saturday is Chris Ash's defense. They played amazing. They held Boise State to 7 points. In the last two games, they have held their opponents to just 10 points a game. And that's going up against an Arkansas offense that had been awesome going into that game against Notre Dame, and then a Boise State offense that was top 20 in the country in rushing yards per game and pass yards per game, and Notre Dame just shut them down. They also got a ton of pressure on Madsen, which has been something we have been dying to see all season long. Notre Dame held Boise State to 2.9 yards per carry in 5.8 yards per attempt. Going into this game, we said one of the keys was to limit explosives, and Boise State couldn't really get anything going downfield. I think their longest play of the game was a 20-yard rush by Dylan Riley. No, I take that back. Chris Marshall had a 28-yard reception, as did Matt Wagner. But the fact that Notre Dame was able to keep everything in front of them throughout the game was critical. It was a point of emphasis in the game plan, and I thought they executed it perfectly. And I'll admit, when we had Luke Smith on the show on Tuesday, when we're doing our final thoughts, 3 things we liked and didn't like, I was a little bit critical of the Notre Dame linebackers and their performance going into this game against Boise State. I thought they had their moments for sure, but overall I thought their play had been pretty average, at least relative to expectations. And the Notre Dame linebackers were terrific in this game. Kingston Valean-Moasa, his best game in a Notre Dame uniform, in my opinion. He led the team in tackles with 8, and he was tied for the team lead with Jaden Ausberry, another Notre Dame linebacker. Kingston also had half a sack, a big pass broken up on, I believe it was 3rd down or 4th down. Either way, huge play by him in that moment. Jaden Ausberry has 8 tackles. He has a tackle for loss, and they are a big reason why Boise State just could not run the ball all game. And their running backs coming into this were averaging over 6 yards a carry. They had some big explosive runs, but they just couldn't get anything doing against this Notre Dame defense. And that's actually been one strength of this unit throughout the season. They've been really good at stopping the run for the most part, and Boise State was just not able to move the ball effectively on the ground, which means they had to put everything on Maddox Madsen, and I give that guy some credit. He's a little bit undersized for a quarterback. He's 5'10". He's trying his hardest out there. He's running for his life on a bunch of different plays. He made some tough plays, but ultimately, when you put the entire game plan on him and he has to do it all himself, it's just not going to work going up against the talent on the Notre Dame defense, and that's why Madsen ended up throwing 4 interceptions on the day, 2 of which were to Leonard Moore. It's real nice to have your best defensive player back. Leonard Moore was probable going into the game, and as I understand it, he basically told the coaching staff, I'm playing in this game. He made the decision. He was going to be out there, and he had a terrific game. He had 2 interceptions, was just blanketing Boise State wide receivers in coverage all day long, and every time they threw it his way, you knew Leonard Moore was going to come up with a big play. He gets 2 interceptions. He has 3 total on the year, and he's playing like the best cornerback in the country, but it wasn't just him. I thought Christian Gray had a really good game, as did the Notre Dame safeties. Tay Johnson had an interception that at one point I thought he was going to return for a touchdown. Wouldn't have mattered anyway because there was a holding on the return. Of course there was, right? And then Adon Schuler had another really big game, 7 total tackles for him. And I just was really impressed with what I saw from the Notre Dame secondary as a whole. Dallas Golden was getting a lot of reps out there at nickel. He finished with 6 tackles, had a couple nice plays in coverage. So this was a complete performance from the Notre Dame defense. They were getting pressure in the backfield. Boubacar Traore was a nightmare for Boise State's offensive line. He had half a sack in this game as well. Jalen Snead, I forgot to mention him with the Notre Dame linebackers. He was all over the field, and his snaps had been limited in recent games. Man, Framo was getting a little bit more action, but what I loved about Snead's performance is the way that Chris Ash utilized him. He was rushing the passer a lot more in this game than we had seen in the past, and he was getting home. He had a big sack. He was making plays. He was just hitting really hard, and this looked like a 2024 Notre Dame defense. It wasn't just the fact that they were making plays, right? They were tackling. tackling better. They were covering guys better. They just were playing so much faster than we've seen all season. When they play fast, they're violent. And this is a violent group. Jordan Botelho just absolutely annihilated the Boise State running back and just drove him down at one point. And they were just making all kinds of hits. Tate Johnson had a couple big hits. Not bad for a player who was a wide receiver in high school and had to convert to defense once he got to college. So I was really, really impressed with what I saw from Chris Ash's unit. And this is the type of performance that you think can carry over to the next game against NC State. And then they're going to be tested in a big way against USC. But considering what they looked like to start the season, when it looked really, really bad in those 6 quarters between Texas A&M and that first half against Purdue, they made a lot of those mistakes back then, but it looks like they've cleaned it up. Whatever they're doing in the game plan, whether it's simplifying things, like I said earlier this week, it doesn't look like they changed a ton schematically, but it looks like the players understand what they are being asked to do on a play-to-play basis, and it is showing up in a big way. So great performance by the Notre Dame defense, despite everything that they had to deal with the officials and the fact that maybe Boise State's best offense at certain points was just getting some flags called on the Notre Dame defense. When that happens, it's easy for defenses to just get pissed off and not play their hardest, but that never happened for this Notre Dame defense. They had an outstanding game. Now, as for the Notre Dame offense, this was a really up and down day for them. They finished with 28 points. They could have had a whole lot more, but this was a very up and down day for that group. We're going to talk about it coming up next. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is both of Leonard Moore's interceptions in this game. Look, Boise State had their opportunities on offense, but whenever they tried to throw 15's way, he made them pay for it. He came up with 2 critical interceptions in this game in his first game back after injury. Leonard Moore is the best cornerback in the country, and he's playing like it. And when he plays like that, the rest of the Notre Dame defense is able to follow suit. That's what keeps fans and players alike moving forward, always chasing the next great moment. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. The weekend is officially here. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. All right, let's break it down. For Notre Dame, it was Jadarian Price who delivered with a knockout punch in this game. He had a 49-yard touchdown run to put the Irish up 28-7 and all but put the game away. He was shedding off tacklers on that play like it was his job. And it was one of the best runs we have seen from Notre Dame running back all season long. And there have been plenty of great runs from Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. When the pressure was on, Price came through. No hesitation, no delay. And just like Jadarian Price delivered for Notre Dame, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday and keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Maybe the biggest surprise of this game is that the over did not hit, because I thought that was a lock going into this one. The point total was 63.5 when you consider how well Notre Dame's offense had been playing as of late, going back to that game against Texas A&M and then Purdue and then Arkansas. They had just been humming, and I thought for sure they would be able to put up 42 points. And in this game, they should have put up 42 points. They had plenty of chances to score, but they end up with 28. Notre Dame's defense holds up their end of the bargain. They hold Boise State to 7. So they only have a combined 35 points in this game, but I feel like the Notre Dame offense left a lot of points on the board. And there's things I liked from Notre Dame's offense in this game, and certainly some things that I didn't like. At the beginning, I didn't really like Mike Denbrock's play calling, especially near the goal line on that first possession of the game. And I understand that after the Texas A&M game, everyone was frustrated with the Wildcat. It worked on some plays. It didn't on others. It's easy to remember the times where it didn't work, but they also came up with a couple huge conversions running the Wildcat, and then we had not seen it since that game. Well, then Notre Dame drives right down the field to start the game, 10 plays, 73 yards. They're knocking on the door to score against Boise State. Billy Schrouth has an ill-timed false start that puts Notre Dame back. They get a little bit closer on a play to Eli Raridan in the flat. So now there they have it, 4th and about 2 yards, right near the end zone. And going into this game, Boise State had not made one stop in the red zone. And I felt like that was going to be a big weakness for them. Well, on the first drive of this game, they get their first stop. Why? Because Notre Dame decides to shift into the Wildcat on the play. And here's what I don't like about it. Okay, if you're running the Wildcat and you just want to give Jeremiah Love the ball directly and you want to just eliminate any time, so he gets the ball and he can just run full speed into the line of scrimmage, find a crease, get in the end zone. I actually understand that. So why on earth is Jeremiah Love faking a handoff to CJ Carr in that situation? In what world would Jeremiah Love actually give Carr the ball in that spot? So do you think that the Boise State defense is going to bite on that at all? No. So you're just wasting time. You're just wasting precious seconds. So then Jeremiah Love obviously doesn't give it to Carr, and then he goes straight down the field, and he runs right into two Boise State defenders. I think part of him didn't bounce it outside because he had flashbacks to that play on 4th and 1 against Texas A&M where he bounced it outside when he didn't have to, and he got stuffed. Well, this time, he could have easily bounced it outside, walked into the end zone. Instead, he runs right into the face of two Boise State defenders who held tough and stopped him there at the 1-yard line. Like in that situation, why get cute? Spread it out, hand the ball off, and run it right up the middle if that's what you want to do. And Mike Denbrock has a tendency to get a little cute when Notre Dame gets down to the 1. It reminded me of last year when Notre Dame was facing Army, and they ran some exotic formations that I think Denbrock said was supposed to be like a salute to the Four Horsemen and what they did because it was like the 100th year anniversary of the Four Horsemen. Look, man, that's great. Great salute, great tribute. How about you just get in the end zone to salute them? They didn't do it on that time. They got stuff like 3 times in a row, didn't score, and they got cute in this scenario, and they didn't score on this play. So that was really frustrating because Notre Dame got the ball to start the game. They drove right down the field, and they weren't able to score. Now, Notre Dame's defense stepped up in the ensuing possession, and Notre Dame got the ball back, and they went right down the field. And Will Pauling made an excellent catch for a touchdown. It was a great throw by Carr, too, who basically had to make up for a pass because earlier on that drive, he had Will Pauling deep on the slot fade. Pauling had his defender beat, and then Carr was a little bit late on the throw. He underthrew it slightly. Now, I would say that Will Pauling should still have probably made that catch because if you watch a replay, the ball goes literally right through his hands, hits his chest. But because Carr was late on the throw and it was a little bit underthrown, it allowed time for the Boise State defender to at least get in the way, and that was enough to make the incomplete pass on that specific play. But then CJ Carr bounced back and delivers an absolute dime to Will Pauling on the left side of the end zone. Also just an incredible catch by number 2. He was a big factor in this game. Clearly, they were targeting him a lot with Jane Greathouse out with an injury. I expect Jane Greathouse to be back by the USC game, so good news there. But that was a frustrating start to the game, and then the fact that Eric Schmidt just goes out there and takes forever to kick that extra point, it allows Boise State to block it. So then Notre Dame goes up 6-0. Boise State is able to score later on in the second quarter. They go up 7-6, and you're thinking, all right, is this going to be one of those games? Is this going to be one of those games where it's the second half and we're thinking, how is Notre Dame even still in this game? Well, Notre Dame was able to respond with a 9-play, 75-yard drive after Boise State went up 7-6. Jeremiah Love runs 4 yards straight into the teeth of the defense. But guess what? Notre Dame spread the offense out a little bit there. They spread out the box. It was a little bit lighter. And then Jeremiah Love just walked into the end zone. Great run by Jeremiah Love. He came back from an injury in this game. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I've actually got this new Jeremiah Love t-shirt here. I'm trying to show it so everyone can see it. And my girlfriend got me this as a gift. And this is the first time I ever wore it. So when Jeremiah Love went down with an injury, I was like, oh my God, I really am the jinx. But fortunately, Love was able to get back in this game. He ended up having a really good game. He finished with just 1 yard shy. Oh, no, he ended up getting over 100. 16 carries, 103 yards, averaged 6.4 yards per carry, had a long of 36 in the touchdown. So great to see Jeremiah Love bounce back from that injury. It was a little bit scary at one point when he went down. He was holding his knee. Then he walked off in his own power, and you knew he was going to be okay. Jadarian Price came through once again. Like, this tandem is the best in the country. It's actually kind of funny to think back now that people even considered Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen as a better 1-2 combo than these two because they got shut down by Oregon, and then they just lost to UCLA today in the Rose Bowl, and I think maybe 8,000 people were there to watch it. Tough times for James Franklin and Penn State, but they couldn't run the ball. And maybe Jaywan Sider saw the writing on the wall, and he left Penn State to become the running backs coach at Notre Dame. And these running backs just had another terrific performance. Like, for the up and down day for the offense, you know you can lean on 4 and 24. They combined for 186 rushing yards. I mean, Jadarian Price got 8 carries and averaged 10.4 yards per carry, because he had a 49-yard touchdown run. That is maybe one of the highlights of the season so far. That was an incredible run to put Notre Dame up 28-7, ice the game in that moment. And is running like such a different back this year. We always knew he was explosive. Last year, he'd get to the outside, he'd make some big plays. But this year, the force that he is running with in between the tackles is setting up more explosive plays. And it's to the point now where every single time Jadarian Price gets the ball, and if he can just get through that first level, I am convinced he's going to take every single carry to the house. So even though Notre Dame's offense as a whole had an up and down day, Notre Dame's running backs came through in a big way. Another thing I want to talk about with this offense, it felt like the offensive line took a bit of a step back. Now, got to give credit to Boise State. We knew that they were going to bring pressure in this game, and they did. They brought pressure early and often, especially on the early downs. They were reading some of those Notre Dame run plays, and they were just sending everyone. Now, sometimes they would come back to bite them because Notre Dame would run the opposite direction, and that would create big running lanes for the running backs. But they were in the backfield a lot. They finished with 5 tackles for loss in this game. They didn't have a sack in this game, but Boise State did get some pressure on C.J. Carr. I thought Carr handled the pressure a little bit better in this game, but I think it's safe to say that was Carr's worst performance in a Notre Dame uniform. The good thing for Notre Dame is if that's the worst game that we're going to see all season from C.J. Carr, that's a pretty good place to be because Carr still finished 15 of 23 for 189 yards passing, 2 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. But everyone watching that game knows he missed some easy throws, some throws that we're not accustomed to seeing C.J. Carr miss. Like he missed Will Pauling on a post route on 4th down that was so wide open. I'm pretty sure that me and you watching or listening could have made that throw. And yeah, there's some throws where you're like, okay, you could chalk that up to him being a redshirt freshman, inexperience, all that stuff. That was not inexperience. That was not him just making his 5th career start in college. That is a throw that every single starting quarterback at the Power 4 level should be able to make, and C.J. Carr just missed it. It happens, but I'm glad it happened in this game because if it happened against USC or a tougher opponent where Notre Dame was in a critical spot, like that kind of throw, that could be just a debilitating blow to the offense. So he missed that throw. He missed the throw to Will Pauling earlier, and then late in the game when Notre Dame was basically running out the clock, but they were trying to move the ball a little bit more downfield, C.J. Carr had Micah Gilbert wide open down the middle of the field. He had him beat, and then C.J. Carr just underthrew it, allowed time for the Boise State defenders to get in there, make a play. And when you have such high expectations for C.J. Carr based off of his play, like you have to give him credit because he has played so well that we expect pretty much perfection every time he steps out there, even though he's this young and inexperienced. He did not live up to that standard today. It happens. It's okay. You just hope that he watches this and improves upon it going forward. And based on what we've seen from him so far, I am very confident that he is going to be able to learn from these mistakes. He's going to come out in this next game. He's going to be a little bit sharper because he needs to be clicking on all cylinders against USC because that looks like it could be a shootout in that game unless the Notre Dame defense continues to improve. But when you have a game like this on offense, it's frustrating because you know that you're better than that. They could have easily put up 42. Honestly, they should have because they had 2 easy touchdown opportunities with the possession at the goal line to start the game. The pass to Will Pauling, like that's 42 points right there. And maybe they could have had some more effective plays if they didn't just have a million calls thrown on them. But anyway, the defense stood tall in this game. They had a great performance. The offense really did not play their best. I would say it was probably like a B-, C+ game for the offense overall, even though the running backs played great. And I thought the wide receivers had another good game. I mean, Jordan Faison, what he has done to improve his game is just incredible. He leads the team in receptions again, 6 receptions, 83 yards. Like, just great game by him. Malachi Fields, only 4 catches, 44 yards, but some big ones, like that touchdown pass there at the end. So I'm really frustrated with the offensive performance today because I know they could have done better, but it was one of those where like they showed enough flashes that you're thinking, okay, this is just a bad game. They're going to get things cleaned up going forward, and this offense is going to be back to putting up 40 points on every team they play here in the near future. All right, we've talked about the offense and defense, but after a game like that, what does it really mean going forward? We're talking about it right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus powered by Peloton IQ. It is their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance in endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. I love how the Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, and corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. The swivel screen is a game changer. You can go from running on the Tread Plus to strength training without missing a beat. And the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged. You get workouts tailored to your vibe and energy level each week. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. As we know, in college football, we have a tendency to talk about every single result, win or loss, about how it affects the college football playoff. And if you've been watching or listening to the show lately, you know that I'm not in the business of doing that just yet. We'll talk about the playoff at some point if Notre Dame keeps stacking wins and we get to November and they're right there in the mix. But for now, this is just one of those games where you needed to get out of there with a win, and that's exactly what Notre Dame did. I don't think this affects the trajectory of the team, of the program, of this season. It was just a really sloppy game in which they had to take care of business, and they did. You got to give credit to Boise State. They're a tough team. They have some good players. They were clearly overmatched from a talent perspective, but that is a proud program, and they played like it. Based on what I could see on television, it looked like it was maybe 25 to 30% Boise State fans in the crowd. So this was a huge deal for them, and they played really hard for 60 minutes, but Notre Dame was the better team. In the beginning, I was getting a little worried because when they got stuffed on that 4th and 1, and then C.J. Carr missed that wide open touchdown pass to Will Pauling, and it felt like every single call that could be thrown, every single flag was thrown, and a lot of them were going in favor of Boise State. I'm thinking, man, these are the types of games, like when you're playing an overmatched team, if they're going to pull off the upset, they need everything to go their way. And for a while there, it did feel like everything was going Boise State's way when they were up 7-6 and they had a real chance in the first half. But then Notre Dame settled down. They leaned on their defense, which is something that they have not done all season, and the defense came through. 4 turnovers to 0 for Notre Dame. You're going to win every single time that happens, especially against a team like Boise State. So Notre Dame proved that they can win a game when they're not at their best. And I know that we as fans want every game to be like Arkansas, where the offense is perfect and the defense is almost flawless as well, but that's not really how college football works. Sometimes you just have off games for a bunch of different reasons, and I feel like this was an off night for Notre Dame, and yet they were still able to cover the 3-touchdown spread. So this was a really solid win for Notre Dame. Again, like I said at the beginning, this is probably not something that we're going to be talking about a ton in the offseason, where years from now, we're not going to be like, hey, remember that Boise State game? That was awesome. No, that's not the case for this game. And there's different times, like last year, I feel like when Notre Dame played Georgia Tech, it was just a good win. It wasn't anything super impressive. The offense kind of had an up and down day. The defense didn't look that great going up against Georgia Tech's backup quarterback. Like sometimes when you have a 12-game regular season, there are going to be games like this. And if this was a more poorly coached team, or if this team was even more undisciplined, then they could have been in this game in the fourth quarter where it's really tight, but that's not the case. Notre Dame was much better. They didn't let all the officiating miscues go against them. They stayed locked in. They kept making plays, especially on the defense. And I'm just so impressed with what I saw from that group, because really Boise State's only offense was Maddox Madsen just running around for his life and then finding some guy at the last possible second before he got his head ripped off, or the officials just gifting them 10 to 15 yards. So when a game like that happens, you just have to stay focused on every single play, on every single snap, and that's what Notre Dame was able to do. They were able to get out of there with a win. So now they're 3-2 on the season. They've got NC State coming up next, and then they've got USC and then a bye week. This is the most critical point in the schedule. It started with Boise State and Arkansas, and now with NC State coming in, who they might not be the NC State of old, but they're still a competent team, I should say. And then USC. USC is on a bye this weekend. They face Michigan next weekend. That's going to be a big game for them. If they win that, I think they'll probably be ranked when they take on Notre Dame. Either way, that is going to be probably the last big test left on the schedule, because after that, Notre Dame's schedule really softens up. They've got a bye week, and then going into the end of October and the rest of November, it's just a bunch of bad teams like Boston College, Stanford. I don't think Pitt is very good either. So even though this wasn't like some statement win where Notre Dame went out there and beat Boise State 60-0, that can't really be the expectation every single game. And look, they still covered. And I would imagine that most people who vote on the AP poll and who vote on the College Football Playoff Committee, they probably turn this off because it was painful to watch, and I don't blame them. So Notre Dame took care of business in this game. I'm not going to talk about how it affects the playoff yet, but they just have to keep stacking wins. And as long as they keep doing that, and they keep doing it by several touchdowns, which they did in this game, then this team is going to put themselves right there in the mix at the end of the season. Overall, great performance by the defense. I think that is something that is going to continue. I really am starting to believe that they finally turned a corner. I was impressed with what I saw against Arkansas, but I wasn't ready to fully buy into this group yet, but I'm getting there, right? I'm not all the way in yet. I'm getting close, right? If Notre Dame can dominate NC State on defense, and if they can really hold that USC offense in check, I'm going to be all in on this group once again. And then once the offense gets things going again, this team could be really, really special. So thank God that's over. Like I said at the top, Notre Dame wins 28-7. This was a good win, a necessary win. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more in the next couple of days, as a matter of fact. But that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks again for making this your first watch or listen after the game. Please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed the show, give the video a like, rate the podcast 5 stars, and leave a review. Remember, I'm going to be back here tomorrow night. We're doing the first ever Sunday night live show on the Locked On Irish YouTube channel. Going to be going live around 8 p.m. Eastern once the afternoon slate of NFL games wraps up, and there's some downtime before the primetime matchup. Haven't done this before. Should be fun. Going to try to keep it laid back, casual. Going to take some questions from the chat. It's going to be kind of like a mailbag episode. We're going to see how it goes. And if it ends up being a success, we'll do it every week. And if not, maybe we'll just change some things around. But I'm excited to do that. I'm excited to see you tomorrow. But thank you for tuning into today's Instant Reaction. Enjoy the win. Enjoy the weekend. And go Irish.